Tokyo, Japan. My name is Gary Verheller, and I'll be your host for what we call the Substance of Living podcast. Today, we'll look at what we call life's lessons. And I hope this will provide you with some insight, maybe even some inspiration to life's challenges. And welcome to episode number 29, Competition Part 1. We win! How often have you heard that? Well, competition can be good, competition can be bad. And let's look at competition today. Let's look at kind of the downsides, the negative part of competition. Part 2 is going to be about the good parts of competition. Now first, let's define. The word competition comes from the word to compete. And I'm going to read this for you, so let me read it to you. Strive to gain or win something by defeating or establishing superiority over others. I have a real problem with that. I think that's the idea of me comparing myself to another and I'm superior, or defeating them, the other person's a loser. I just like that. So let's talk about some of the dangers of competition, particularly if you do this with kids. And I've been a soccer coach, and I've also been a Little League baseball player and Little League soccer player, so I've experienced it myself as well as having coached it. Okay, a downside, competition can harbor hostility and aggression. In other words, the opposite team, they're the enemy. You've got to hate them, and I think that's horrible. It's not what I think competition should be at all. And as a result, winning is everything, and winning at all costs. Winning isn't everything, but it's way out ahead of what's ever in second place. Nonsense like that. So that can actually interfere, particularly with the developing child's idea of the world. So be careful with that, this winning at all costs. Next thing is it can lead to dropping out. Kids can be told, you've got to compete, you've got to be the best, you've got to be good. And if you're not playing the game, if you're sitting on the bench, pretty soon the kid's going to say, this is a game to be played, I'm not playing, why should I watch? And just drop out. It can also lead to depression and self-doubt with the kid. And a kid could carry that with them all their lives. It can trigger injuries. What do I mean? Well, many times I've heard walk it off when I was a kid, like if I'd get hit by a baseball or something. Walk it off, and I'm going to be a tough guy, be a man. Pain, the whole purpose of pain is to draw your attention to something that isn't quite right and that might have done damage. The idea that walk it off, suck it up, be a man type of thing, that can actually be dangerous and can lead to injuries. I know because I blew out my ankle, my left ankle, in playing soccer, and I played the entire rest of the game. And when I finally did go to an orthopedic surgeon, he said my ankle was hanging literally by threads of a tendon. And if I did it again, I'd have to go under the knife. So you have to be careful that competition can actually lead to injuries. Competition can choke or inhibit performance. You have so much pressure on yourself, so much pressure to do well. You can only think about that instead of relax and move into what you need to do. And as a result, mentally, you can block yourself and obstruct yourself from being at your best. It can also trigger fear and anger, particularly in a kid, because they know they did it in practice, and now when the game comes and they just failed and they're afraid to try it again and they're angry at themselves. So it can lead to problems. Another thing is it can be ego deflating. You're never good enough. I heard this, I felt this, I lived this when I was a kid. And it really hurt. And it took me a long while, to be able to step back and say, okay, well, what is reality telling me? And allowing myself to be who I am and relearning how to learn, relearning how to perform. It took me years to do that. So be careful about how deflating competition can be. There's also a problem with a win-win situation. Now, that's supposed to be a positive idea, win-win. But that indicates or that suggests somebody else's lose-lose. Why not just take that out? And that's what we're going to talk about on the next episode of Competition, which is going to be Competition Part 2. There is a good side to competition. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today for the Substance of Living podcast. If you'd be kind enough to consider subscribing, you can contact us through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or connect on Twitter. Join us again next time for what I hope will help you navigate life.